Hello, music lovers, you pop-tastic appreciators of 60s pop or something like that. Welcome to Full Record Jacket with Phil and Ben. Ben, you got a jacket on?
I have got a jacket, dude. It's not full of records, but it is a jacket. I'm a lover of hoodies, dude. I'm a lover of hoodies.
Well, on this particular show, we are in the pre-hoodie era because we're back in 1963, an album that came out in the very week that we're recording this show. And Ben's actually got a very original vinyl copy of what you could call the black and white album. We're talking about With the Beatles. That's just a CD, but Ben's got an original. Look at that. That's from December 1963. Because on the back, does it show that the person who bought
does
that?
On the back, look, somebody bought it and dated it on the 20th of the 12th, 1963.
So that is an original pressing.
Slightly damaged here.
How does it sound?
Quiet.
Pretty low level recording on there.
Yeah, then. nothing. I can't really. If I shake it makes a rattling noise.
Have you actually been listening to that particular disc this
No,
week?
I've got something to admit to you, Phil.
Yeah.
You know, you said on your pre-show amble, whatever you do, don't listen to the stereo mix of this. Guess what I went and did? I went and listened to the stereo mix.
You went on Spotify, didn't you?
I did, and can I say, it's goddamn awful. It's awful. It just sounds like you've got the vocals and everything here, and then you've got sort of faded guitars and that over here. It gave me a headache. It literally.
Now you know why some of us bought this, don't you? Eh?
Now you know why some of us copied it off of you. But yeah, no, I must admit, I know you sort of harp on about the, mono and stereo, and I know I've often said, oh yeah, but Muse are only going to hear what Muse are going to hear. Well, I've come to the conclusion that is a stupid fallacy of mine. That in headphones, I mean, it might have sounded different on the old turntable behind me if I'd had it on in stereo on that, but from the Spotify, it just sounded absolutely awful. It literally gave me a headache.
Yeah, well, my problem with the early stuff from that era in stereo is obviously the separation is very wide because it was generally. Do you remember those radiogram things you used to be able to buy in the 60s? It had a record player in the middle.
I wasn't around in the 60s, Phil. I know you were just leaving school around those.
It was kind of like a sideboard, and it had built-in speakers into it and a record player in the middle, right?
Them, yeah.
Well, those things, when they first started making stereo records, it was almost like a gimmick to show people, hey, look, things are ping-ponging around from left to right. So they used to mix things like that. And also because obviously they weren't multi-track recordings. They sometimes were only two-track recordings, and they couldn't separate stuff out to make a proper stereo picture like you do with modern records.
It was awful. I've got to admit, it's the first time I've listened to something in stereo where I've actually thought, this sounds... It just sounded... And it didn't even sound centered. It didn't even sound like... It just sounded like everything was separate. And
exactly. There's nothing in the middle. That's the thing.
No.
This is why I like the mono, because obviously it's just all in the middle, and they were very well mixed. You can still hear a lot, and it's almost when you listen to it on a twin speaker setup with mono, you do get a bit of sort of, they call it almost front to back layering. You do get to hear it well. But yeah, I mean, to me, there's just a solidity about the mono. And that is how people heard these records in the 60s. Very few people, or comparatively few, bought the stereo in the 60s. And when these records were played on the radio, it was mono. No one had a stereo radio. Well, there wasn't stereo radio in the 60s. It was AM. So the Beatles records at the time were heard in mono, and those are the ones that really they worked on in the studio. They would have heard the playback of the mono mix, and the stereo. Stereo was done a bit later. So the purist view is mono, and I also think that it sounds better, sounds more solid and rounded to me, but that's just me.
I think, now I have listened to this, I'm going to listen to it again, I'm probably going to give it a clean, but I have a feeling when I put that on, or I did actually listen to it, the Beatles, while I was out driving a couple of weeks ago, in mono, in a noisy van, and even with the road noise from my van, it still sounded better than the stereo mix. It just sounded like it was like that the whole time.
So we've been listening to this album to celebrate its 60th anniversary, and we are now going to rank the songs in our personal order of preference. I'm on my third draft of this list.
Well, I've just started my third draft. I've just swapped 2 around.
I'm still not happy with it. It's one of those where I keep swapping them around because I can't decide which of my favourite songs on the record.
I was convinced on my bottom track. I was convinced when I first heard it. I thought, don't like this. It's all over the place. The harmonies just sound rubbish. The harmonica sounds rubbish. Everything sounds rubbish. And then I was chatting to a friend of the show, Mr. Harper from the Big Sugars. And when I told him about this track, he said, "Oh yeah, it's really good. It's quite upbeat about it." So I went back to a fresh pair of ears, and I was actually like, "Do you know what? It's actually quite good because you could almost imagine at the end of it, John Lennon going, 'That'll do. That's it. That's all it's going to be. That's fine.'" And it's almost like when he's singing it, a little bit of a wink and a nudge to go, "I'm not really. I know this isn't a great song. I'm just going along with the flow of it." So, but yeah, so I'm swapping 2 around. So I've now got a new number 14 and a new number 11.
Okay. Well, what are your thoughts generally on this album before we dive in? What did you think of it generally?
To me, if you split the Beatles into their sort of... I always said the Beatles had 3 periods. They had their early period, obviously. They had the middle period, obviously. And they had the end period. The middle period is always my favourite period because you had Rubber Soul and Revolver. And I suppose you could put Sergeant Pepper into that middle period sort of era, and maybe Help. So that sort of middle period. The early Beatles, I always find it a little bit whimsical because it's all, "I want to hold your hand" and all that sort of stuff. But once you get over that and you take it for what it is, that there's probably more constraints from record companies in the earlier days.
Well, that's what songwriting was in those days, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And my favourite period, if I had to rank those periods of Beatles, it's middle period, end period, start of period. So listen to it in stereo didn't help. But it is a good album. I mean, for the top, it's solid. The covers are good. It flows fairly well. I don't think it really sort of, there's any major hiccups in it. It's a B plus. That's what I'm going for. B plus.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's certainly, for me, it's sort of 4-star, 4 out of 5, B, whatever. Yeah. It's fun. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's got a lot of energy. It's that early era. Yeah, it's the early era. And it's quite good to hear these songs because they're not the ones that you keep hearing. They're not "I Want to Hold Your Hand" or "She Loves You" or the ones that we've heard a lot of. It's like a bit of a different side to them in a way. So, all good fun. My personal view is there's nothing on it that I totally hate. There's something to enjoy. For me, there's something to enjoy on every track in a way, even the ones that are a bit weaker. But for me, it's an album that is mainly about, more than anything, about Lennon's vocals. I think he dominates this.
Yeah, he does. He has the main vocal duties on this album.
For sure, yeah. On this, I think Paul McCartney hadn't quite come into that being an equal of John in terms of the performing at this point. I think he would gradually move into that position over the next year or two. But I think
as a singer, in the end, Paul McCartney was the better singer. I think he could do that sort of American rock and roll, hit the high notes, as well as doing that sort of drawl and stuff.
He certainly had a big range. He had a big range.
Yeah, he had a bigger range, I'd say, than Lennon.
I tend to like them both pretty much equally as vocalists, really. I think I find it difficult to pick between them because there's a lot I love about both of them. But I do think they're 2 of the best I mean, they both absorbed their influence of early rock and roll so well, and I think they both were great rock and roll singers. You know, they both did great vocals on rock and roll type songs. Anyway, shall we get into this record?
Let's get ranking.
So number
do you like
14.
A good ranking, Phil?
Well, I like a good ranking. So at number 14.
Do you rank very often?
All the time. Yeah, every
I'm
album
always
I listen
ranking.
to. Yeah.
As many times as I can a day, I'm like, rank this, rank that. It's what I look forward to. Good old rank.
So what have you got at the bottom of the list?
And my new number 14 is Hold Me Tight. That is my bottom of the list because of it's just the cheesy sort of hold me tight. That sort of. But I do like the kind of backward and forward of the heart. But something had to come last. And this was number 11 until about 4 minutes ago. Now it's gone down to 14. So merely for the harmony, merely for that sort of hold me tight. It's just that sort of line just doesn't infuse me.
Well, Hold Me Tight was one thing about it that's notable is that lyrically it was a little bit daring for its day. Because it's not let's say it's not just about kissing and cuddling, folks. It goes a bit further than that. So it was a little bit risque for its day. But I am concurring because it is also my bottom track.
Phil.
And I think the reason it is on the bottom, I've got it here on my list. I think the reason is there's something about it it feels as if it's not quite finished. It feels as if it's sort of not quite all there somehow.
Yeah, the hand clapping doesn't seem to be.
It's almost as if they were. It does seem as I think I may be wrong about this now, but I think this is one that Paul McCartney had written a little bit before, and I think it was sort of we'll grab a song that we had hanging around to fill the album out.
Yeah,
and I don't think that they ever performed this on stage. But it's got a bit of energy. It's sort of, it's not horrendous. It has a bit of pace. It keeps the album going. It doesn't totally derail the record or anything. But it is, I agree, one of the weaker compositions on the record. So we agree. What have you got at number 13?
At number 13 is another Lennon and McCartney one. Not a second time.
Okay.
And that was a tough one for me. I just don't think I enjoyed it as much as some of the covers. Covers had a bit more sort of, bit more going for them. It's like we were saying before we came on air. It's not the fact these are bad songs, but we've got to rank them in the order that we sort of see them. And I just didn't enjoy it as much as some of the others. And that's all I can say about it. It's another Lennon vocal, though, isn't it? I think Lennon's the vocalist on this one.
It is a John Lennon vocal on there.
Yeah.
So, what do you think I've got at number 13?
I'm going to say Little Child.
It's not at number 13. What I've got is I Want to Be Your Man.
I want to be your man.
Which
I want to be
I
your
do really.
man.
The thing is, I did put it here, and then when I played the album again, I thought, oh, you know what? I do actually enjoy this, and it's fun. But then I thought, I don't know. It's kind of, it's quite a basic song. But then I suppose there's nothing wrong with being a bit basic. That's rock and roll, isn't it? So, of course, this is the one that was given to the Stones as well. And it was written as the sort of the custom song for Ringo, as to replace Boys on the first album, or to fulfill that role. And it is quite good, but it's just sort of, it's good, but it's not outstanding. And it ended up near the bottom of my list, but it's not to say I don't like it. I do enjoy it.
It's in the relegation zone.
It's in the relegation zone.
It is.
So that's my number 13. I Want to Be Your Man.
Oh, do you? I've been waiting for you to say that, Phil.
So, Number 12, Benjamin. What do we
Number
have?
12 is Devil in Her Heart.
Okay.
I do like it. It's got that fun bit. She got the devil in her. I like the sort of devil in her heart bit, and I like the sort of, is it like almost like Spanish guitar, whatever going on it? You can almost imagine somebody with some maracas going.
Hmm.
So I do
It's
quite
the
like that bit. It's a
it's a bit
jolly
of a
song.
it's a bit of a George. Well, it was the one for George, wasn't it? Really, that he got to
Yeah.
do a cover. And I think the group that originally did this was a girl group called the Donnays, who have largely been forgotten. Have you ever heard the original? I think
No.
the original, of course, is "Devil in His Heart." I think this is better than the original. In my opinion, it's better, more fun than the original. This one.
I do
Um,
like it. It's fun because it does make you want to go like that. If you can imagine it playing now,
hmm,
you'll be going like that.
yeah.
Maracas.
Well, it actually went up the rankings for me. Um,
Hmm.
Perhaps because I'd not concentrated on it much before, and it's got a freshness to me that I've kind of rediscovered it. But I can see why it is there. I can see why it's there for sure. My number
She's
12, and
got
this
the
is,
devil in her heart.
and I don't, and I'm part of me is slightly regretting putting this here now. And this is perhaps more to do with me slightly being fed up with it than it not being good. But at number 12,
It won't be long.
I've got Please Mr. Postman.
Do you know what? That song, if it was, I quite like Lennon's vocal on it. That song was going to be my bottom track
Hmm.
because
I
it's another
do.
one of those whimsically sort of,
It's a little bit. It is a cheesy early '60s pop song, um, but I do, and it's another of the girl group songs. Because it was the Marvelettes, I think, first did it. But I think what saves it is his amazingly enthusiastic vocal. He just really gives it everything, doesn't
yeah,
he?
he does. Yeah,
Um,
that's what I liked about it.
so
You can just
that's the
imagine
bit.
him singing it with that pursed lip because he had that, and he sang, didn't he, Johnny? Had like, a bit like Liam Gallagher. Please,
So
Mr. Postman.
it's quite
God, I look like I got
energetic.
8 chins when I do that.
It's quite a fun song. When I was a child, I remember hearing the Carpenters version of it as well. Ever heard that? Sounds
No, I have.
like
Oh, I think I have. Yes, I think it's on the Carpenters, the singles. I think.
probably it sounds exactly like you'd expect it to sound, done by the Carpenters.
Yeah,
So yeah, so that was number 12. Yeah,
that's
we've
number 12.
both done number 12. So what have you got at 11?
Well, 11 is my new number 11, which was my number 14, but it isn't my 14 anymore. It's actually my number 11 because what was number 11 is now my number 14. So I've now moved number 14 up to number 11, completely bypassing 13 and 12. So
So
here it
this,
is. It is Little Child.
well, hey,
Because when I first heard it, I was like, God, this is awful. But then I like the fact that the harmonica makes no sense. The harmonica solo is just all over the place. There's no cohesion to it at all. It's just like it's like somebody gave it to somebody having an asthmatic fit. Just
it is a bit mad, that one, isn't it?
yeah.
I
And it's
do.
only about a minute or so long, isn't it, as well? But
It's less than 2 minutes for sure. 1 minute
yeah,
40 something, maybe. Yeah,
yeah. The more I listen to it, the actually more I like the chaos of it.
yeah. And I do like Lennon's performance on this.
Yeah.
Particularly the bridge part and everything, and it's kind of it's a little bit. There's almost something slightly Scouse about it, isn't there? Although he doesn't sing it in a Scouse accent,
Yeah.
but there's something about
La,
it that's
little child.
it's kind of I do quite enjoy it. In fact, it has gone up mine for
I'm
enjoyment.
so sad and lonely. It's that bit that I really didn't like. That won't you dance with me? That line. I'm so sad and lonely. Won't you dance with me or whatever?
Yeah, I quite like it. Bit
But
of
it's
fun
that
early
I'm
Beatles.
so sad and lonely. That's the bit that got
That's
me.
the bit
But
you
then the
don't like.
harmonica is all over the place.
Well, but my number 11, with apologies to George fans, and I may be wrong about this. Maybe it deserves to be higher. But
Is it Don't Bother Me?
I've put Don't Bother Me, which
Oh.
but then I think about it. Actually, maybe I'm wrong to have put it so low. Maybe it's better than that because it's kind of it does groove along a bit, doesn't it? And it's got
It's
that
almost
kind
got a
of
very the opening guitar to it is very sort of almost Johnny Cash-like. If you think about the
Yeah,
opening, it's got a very country vibe to it almost.
there is a bit of a country vibe to it, and it's that sort of downbeat George, but it's kind of brings across his personality.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
may be I may be wrong for having it so low, but I mean I do like all the tracks that we're going to talk about in one way or another. I do enjoy this, it's good.
It also reminds me of something else. Around that time, you used to, you'd always get in these 60s films, there'd be some 60s band playing in the background. There'd be all the people doing you could just imagine it being
Yeah.
the background of some smoking club, this track. It's sort of,
Yeah, it
it's
is
got that
kind of
sort of
cool. It is
vibe to
cool.
it. You could
So I
imagine
do
people
like it.
Yeah, you could imagine people sitting around listening to it, about 8,000 lava lamps on the go.
Well, I do like it. I do enjoy it. So that's number 11 is Don't Bother Me. Number 10, what do you got?
Number 10, I've got your number 12, I think it is. Please, Mr. Postman. Mr. Postman, can't you see? It's, yeah. Got a letter for me. It's just, yeah. That could
It
easily be
hasn't
my
dated.
worst one. It's full on cheese.
It hasn't dated, has it? It's full of cheese.
No.
It hasn't dated too well, of course, lyrically, has it? Because no young people would have no clue what he was singing about.
Please, please, Mr. Everyman. Or Yodel, or DPD, or whoever's throwing your letters in over the bush.
A fun little, artifact of early 60s pop, but not necessarily an outstanding cover. Yeah, I think they'd probably do it about as well as they could have done, but it's just the song, isn't it, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Number 10, I've got one that I think, have you already mentioned that? You've already mentioned this one, Devil in Her Heart.
Yeah, she's got the devil in her heart.
That did go up a little bit for me because I just find it quite good fun, and
I like the guitar on it. I like
it.
that Spanishy. Would it be class a Spanishy guitar? It's got that sort of Mediterranean sort of.
It's
feel.
fun.
Is Spain
and
in the Mediterranean? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's awful.
So because the south coast of Spain, south and east coast of Spain. So I think perhaps because you don't hear it that often, and it gives it a little bit of a freshness. It's like hearing this Beatles song that you've almost haven't heard before, in a way, and it's just a sort of
it's like digging through
fun.
your underwear drawer and finding a pair of boxers you haven't worn for ages, and then slipping them on. And you're like, oh, I could lunge in these. It feels so good.
So where are you at number 9?
Number nine is, I think you may have already said this one, is I Want to Be Your Man.
Yeah.
It is fun. It is good. It's 3 chords of popness. Probably got more than 3 chords in it, but like I say, it's quite simple. I do like the sort of I want to be your man. Do 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 do. I do like that bit in it. It can, but probably after 10 listens on the stereo, it began to get a little bit annoying.
It could do,
but,
yeah.
Like I say, not a bad song. It's sort of one of the probably more known songs on the album, but it's down there at number 9. It's mid-table. It is literally not Brighton, because Brighton are doing quite well. I'll think of a mid-table team shortly.
Well,
West Ham.
At number
it's
9.
The West Ham of the album.
Well, at number 9, I have Little Child.
Ooh.
And I tell you what is quite good about this is the piano as well, because it's got a piano on it, which I think George Martin plays. Or maybe it's Macca, actually. I think it might be Paul on the piano. But anyway, I think it was overdubbed on. But that adds a little bit of extra something to it. So it's just got that sort of rough and ready, rambunctious rock and rollness to it.
Like I said, it was my bottom track until we started this, and I was like, no, I am going to move it up because
it's fun. I do enjoy it.
Yeah. If you listen back to it, listen to the harmonica bit near the end. Makes no sense.
So number 8,
bad jazz. Oh, right. Number 8 is Roll Over Beethoven.
Okay.
And the reason it's there is, and this may be controversial, but I'm all about controversy, is I think Lennon or McCartney could have done a better vocal than Harrison on it. I think they've got a stronger sort of,
more rock and roll voices.
Yeah, more Chuck Berry-esque sort of vibe to their, if you look at Twist and Shout, that sort of stuff, I think Lennon would have pulled this song off better than Harrison does. That's my only gripe with the song, because it is it's a perfectly good cover, but I just think it's just outside George's vocal range to really give it justice, if I'm honest. Sorry, George.
Well, number 8, we've got something which I've put at number 8, and I do really like this. And in a way, perhaps I could even have put it higher because I just do like it, although this is something that a lot of people probably won't like, because it depends what your tolerance level is for Paul McCartney cheese. But this, well, I'm sure you can guess what this is now. So this is from the musical The Music Man, Paul McCartney doing Till There Was You, which he based on Peggy Lee's version, and which of course was the song that they pulled out for things like the Royal Variety Show, whatever. We'd do something that appeals to the old folks, and Paul would sing this.
That's on the anthology, isn't it?
It is on the anthology, I think. Yes, that's on. I think it's the Palladium Show, whatever it is. Yeah. So I just really enjoy it, and I just enjoy the romantic cheesiness of it, and I do like the way he sings it, even though, of course, he doesn't sing it like Peggy Lee. But there's just something about the way he performs it. I just like it. Yeah.
Fever all through the night.
So that's my number 8. Till There Was You.
Number 8. That's not bad. Do you want to know my number 7?
I do.
It is. I'm just having a look at my list. Has just gone. It's You Really Got a Hold on Me.
Okay.
And this is another one that could have quite easily been nearer the bottom because it's quite slow and melodic. But I do like the vocal on it. I like the vocal. I know the interview. Yeah, so it's, I don't know what, it doesn't actually do anything spectacular as a song. It's a steady Eddie mid-table song, isn't it? It's not,
Well, it's a Smokey Robinson song, so it does have a bit of pedigree,
Yeah. I do like the harmonies. You really got a hold on me. I do like that sort of, But I do like, maybe it could have been higher, but I don't think it could have been higher. I think it's where it needs to be. Another Lennon vocal, though. It's a very good vocal by Lennon, though, yet again.
It is another good vocal.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those, well, we'll talk about it again in a bit because it's going to come up again. But for me in this position, I have put, and again, am I underrating this song? But it's the opening track on the album, It Won't Be Long.
It Won't Be Long.
Which is a brilliant opener to the album. Works really well as an opener. And again, great energy, great. Maybe it's just because I've slightly tired of it. They put a lot of the yeahs into it, which has become a little bit of a trademark thing at that point after She Loves You.
Yeah.
So the yeah. So maybe that slightly gets
tainted
a little bit annoying for me after a while. It's a sort of song that works great as the opener. I don't know whether it would have worked quite as well if it stuck it in the middle of the album. It's a great opening blast and a bit of energy and everything. And it has got a good, it's well written and it is a good, it's a good early Beatles song. But I've just got it at number 7. I do enjoy it, but I've got it at number 7. It Won't Be Long. So we're getting closer to that top 5. So what's your number 6?
My number 6. Now I think you've spoken about this song, Phil. It is the opening track to the album, and it is called "It Won't Be Long." Yeah. It
wasn't long before we got onto it again. Yeah.
Yeah, till I'm At home with
to
you.
you.
I
That
do
is a good
like
one.
it. It was
Yeah, it's
originally
good.
my first list. It was number one in my first list. But it's moved
I
down
can
the
see. Yeah,
rankings.
I can see why it could be someone's number one. It's good. Yeah, it's a good song.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all I got to say on that. Like you say, I think the yeahs could probably get a bit tedious after a while, but it was my number one for a reason because I do enjoy the song. But it's not my number one anymore. It's my number 6.
So my number 6. There's an argument that this is the best Lennon and McCartney song on the album. That there's an argument for that, and this is a song that could, I think, easily have been a hit single, and if they'd released it, it would have been number one. So I'm not knocking this song in any way at all. In fact, perhaps the reason it's number 6 for me is maybe a little bit of fatigue with it because it's not just known for being on this album. This is a song that's been known because it was on the Red album as well, and I'm talking about All My Loving.
Yeah, I can see that.
And this is, of course, this was the, when people say, some people say, well, there are people out there who try to disparage the Beatles, and they say, oh, the Beatles were a boy band. And then people say, you can't say that because the Beatles played all their own instruments and they're a proper band and they played in Hamburg and they did rock and roll and they wrote their own songs, so they're not a boy band, which of course is all true. And they're not like, Take That or, well, okay, Take That did have their own songwriter, didn't they?
Yeah,
But
don't be slagging off Take That, Phil.
No, but you know what I mean. Those
They're
sorts
not
of
911.
No, they're very manufactured boy bands.
A1
Yeah,
or Steps.
What we think of as a boy band now, these very manufactured bands. But of course, at the time, the Beatles were aimed largely at teenage girls who had posters of them and screamed for them and had their favourites and whatever. And they were marketed or they were received by a lot of the fans in the same way as a boy band is received now. So there is some truth in that. I'm not dissing them, of course, in any way. But Paul was, at that point, the cute one that lots of them screamed for.
So am I the Paul McCartney of this?
Very possibly. And I'll let you think that, yeah. And, it was Phil. And John, of course, at that point, John was effectively kind of the leader of the band and he was the main singer. And so when Paul came to sing a song, suddenly it was like, oh, let's all scream because Paul's singing a song, and he was singing All My Loving, which is just, for the teen girls, it's, oh, scream, Paul's singing, he's going to give us all his loving. So it was the boy band moment of the set at that time, I would suggest. But not to say it isn't a great song. It's very, very well, put together song. It's a great Lennon McCartney pop song. But I've just got it at number 6.
I can live with that.
So let's move into your top 5.
My top 5, right? What was my last one?
You went.
It won't
with,
be long. So my next one my next one is All My Loving. Sorry, my list keeps going black. It's All My Loving. All my loving, I will send to you.
And it is good, and it's got a good guitar solo in it as well.
How are they going to send all their loving? That's a package I do not want to receive.
Yeah, I don't know whether this.
I've got a box here. What's in the box? Apparently, Paul McCartney's loving. I am not opening that box.
I don't know whether this level of lyrical analysis of the Beatles' music has been done before. A lot of lyrics have been analysed. I'm not sure whether that question has ever been asked.
Yeah, what were they sending? I will send to you, because I tell you what, if it's what I'm thinking, that is definitely not a parcel I'm opening. Especially if it's come in a jiffy bag.
Oh, God, stop it. All right, so that's your number 5. Before you explore the lyrics any further,
I just snorted like a pig.
Let's go on to my number 5, which is one that you had a little bit lower. Okay. It's the Chuck Berry song on this album. I've got Roll Over Beethoven, and I think there's 2 reasons why I've got it here. Partly because I do love Chuck Berry rock and roll songs.
Yeah.
And I get what you say that John or Paul could have done an even better vocal, and it's I'm not going to argue with that. But what I do like about this is just the way George sings it with such enthusiasm. He just
Yeah,
sounds like he's really up for doing it. Yes,
he
he
does
probably
sound like he
can't.
had a smile on his face while he was doing it.
He can't do it as well as John and Paul maybe, but he's really going to give it everything. And I do really like the bridge in this song.
Yeah,
And if you lead it like it. I
yeah. And
really
it's
like that bridge, and I wish it.
distinguishedly George as well.
Yeah,
It's
and the way he sings the bridge is very George, and I wish it.
yeah,
I wish that bridge came back again in the song. It went on for a bit longer. I always wish it went on for a little bit longer.
yeah.
So for me, it's number 5. Roll over Beethoven.
Yeah, I can live with that one. Right, so we're up to my number 4. And my number 4 is Till There Was You. Because it is cheesy, it is whimsical,
but
but
brilliantly
it's also
so.
it's like a warm wind that just sort of you're like that. Oh, that's nice.
And then there was music and wonderful roses. It's
Yeah,
the
I
wonderful
do like that.
It's the way he sings "Wonderful Roses." I know it's totally cheesy, but I just love the way he
And
sings.
wonderful roses. Yeah, it is. It's like a comforting wind. I don't know if that's ever been used to describe a Beatles record, that they're like a comforting wind.
On a spring day, like a nice
Yeah,
warm wind on a spring day when you've been through a cold winter,
yeah,
and it just
yeah,
feels
yeah.
so nice. I'm now thinking that I should have put it higher up. I really am saying well done for putting it at
Till
number.
there was you. I
Well
do
done
like
for
the fade
being
out on it as well.
well done for being brave enough to put it at your number 4 and risk scorn from people who don't like maca cheese, but we do.
Mac and cheese.
Yeah.
I
So
hate mac and cheese.
number
The
4.
worst meal ever.
Number 4
Go
has
on, Phil.
there were times when I thought this was my favourite track on this album, and then I kind of dropped it a bit. Maybe it's just because, again, maybe I've just focused more on other tracks. But it's a great performance, originally by Barrett Strong, and co-written by Berry Gordy, who of course was the founder of Motown Records. But it is Money. That's What I Want.
Oh, I do
Is
love
number.
money.
It is really good. I mean, it's great track, and it really is great.
Yeah.
And what's great about this track, not only has it got great vocals from John Lennon, but there's also a rock and roll vocal from Paul McCartney backing him up as well.
Yeah.
So it's a great Lennon and McCartney. It's the twist and shout of this album, isn't it? Really,
Yes, definitely.
And it's kind of like Twist and Shout's the one that everybody knows. The public know Twist and Shout. This is kind of like the cool B-side version of Twist and Shout, if you know what I mean. Because a lot of people don't know it. It could have been my number 1, and in fact, I did think of putting it at number 1, and then I kind of ended up not putting it at number 1. But it could easily be on another day my number 1. But there you go, Money.
I'll allow that one, Phil.
What are you having at 3?
3 is where's my list gone? I've just had Till There Was You, didn't I?
Yeah.
Are we at number 3?
Yeah, I just gave you my number 4. My number 5 was Beethoven, then my number 4 was Money. I think you said your number 4 was Till There Was You. Yeah, that was your number 4.
I've done all my loving, haven't I?
Yeah, I think you have.
But
I know I have.
Have I done all I've got to do?
No, you haven't done all I've got to do.
Oh, that's it then.
That's your number 3.
That's my number 3. Yeah. It wasn't. That was my number 4, man. I've just looked at my first list, so that will go in at number 3. All I've got to do.
Yeah.
That can go in there. I like it. It's that. Another Lennon vocal.
Yeah.
Around. Yeah.
And the way it builds up towards the
I do like the way
chorus.
it builds up. Another lovely bit of harmonies. Ringo's drumming is quite in the forefront in this one as well. So
on some days that's my number 1 on this album.
Yeah, I do like it. It is up there. I am still, all I've got to do is make sure my next 2 tracks are in the right order.
Well, at number 3, this is one that I would never have thought I would put up here. And yet, on my last 2 versions of the list, I've had it at number 3. And I don't know whether it's just because I've kind of, obviously I knew it, but I've kind of discovered it anew. And I kind of like it more than I've ever liked it before. So it's shot up there. And it is a John Lennon vocal. And a John Lennon, mainly written by John Lennon. And that is Not a Second Time. It's shot up that far for me.
Blimey, right, because that was my...
It was low for you.
I think it was my bottom track.
I don't know whether it's because it's...
Was it?
A bit of novelty. It wasn't your very bottom because you had Hold Me Tight at the bottom. Yeah, Hold Me Tight was your bottom. Hold Me Tight
was the bottom one, wasn't it?
But yeah, Not a Second Time is the song where a music reviewer, I think it was in the Times newspaper, some guy who was a classical expert, reviewed the song and basically wrote this article saying McCartney and Lennon are really great composers because they do things that other pop writers don't do. And he talked about the musical structure of this song, and he said at the end, the refrain at the end had Aeolian cadences in it. And John Lennon said that he didn't know what the F that meant. And also, most other classical experts have also said they don't know what it means. But this guy decided to call them Aeolian cadences. And John Lennon, even years later in interviews, said that he thought that was the review that started serious analysis of the Beatles music, and in his view perhaps caused people to overanalyze the Beatles music. But that was John Lennon always had that memory of that song. He apparently wrote it. I think this is the one, maybe the one that he wrote in 1961, and had it knocking around for a while. But I do quite like it. But maybe it's a novelty value of me sort of discovering it and thinking, hey, this is better than I thought it was.
Yeah, maybe I've been harsh on it. Maybe in mono it will sound better.
I think maybe you've been harsh on it, but I may have also been too enthusiastic about it. But there you go. It's fun anyway. Not a Second Time.
Oh, we're into top 2, aren't we?
Top 2. So I can't remember what you would have as your number 1 because I can't remember what you haven't mentioned. But what have you got at 2?
Oh, I'm still looking at it now and thinking, do I change? Do I change? Do I change? But I'm not. I'm going to go with Don't Bother Me.
At number 2?
At number 2, because I like the darkiness feel to it and the sort of Johnny Cash vibe to it. And
it is good. It is really good. There is a good vibe to it, a dark vibe to it.
It could almost be, it's got a sort of Doors-esque feel to it. If you know what I mean, that sort of Californian sort of
the late 60s where things got a bit darker because the Doors were a bit dark,
that sort of
darker,
like I said, you could imagine loads of lava lamps going and a smoky room with people doing all the weird back dancing,
and you can imagine Jim Morrison singing it, can't you? Don't bother me. Yeah.
It's kind of very sort of.
There are
maybe
people
a little bit ahead of its time. That song. Really.
There are people who believe that it's their favourite song on the album. You know, George fans, they do love it. There are people who say that's their favourite. So, yeah. I must admit,
well done, George.
I've liked it more over the years. Now, my top 2 as well is interchangeable, and I actually don't know which one to put at the top. But it is a really difficult one, this one. And I'm going to say that my number 2 is You Really Got a Hold on Me.
You really got a hold on me.
And maybe that's partly because I know it's by Smokey Robinson, who's one of the great soul songwriters of all time. And maybe that makes me like it more. But I do think I really like Lennon's vocal on this. I like the piano.
It's got a real full vocal on it. It's really sort of...
He really does commit to it. And they've put this on the new version of the Red album. It's one of the tracks that they added on. And some people have said, well, why has that been added on? And I guess, well, you know, this has been added on and Roll Over Beethoven has been added on. I can see why Beethoven's been put on because it's obviously the Harrison camp wanted another George performance on there.
And maybe Mr. Robinson wants a new yacht. That's what it's on there.
Maybe. Could be. But again, there are some people who think this is the best performance on the album, and in performance terms, maybe it is. It's up there, and maybe it should have been my number one. I don't know, but you really got a hold of me. I think it's pretty solid. One of the best. I think it is one of the best covers of the Beatles. So that is up there for me at number 2. So
we're into the big time now.
So we come to your number 1, Ben. What have you got this week? Could it change ever?
No, because I've already used up all the 13 other tracks. It's a cover, and it is Money, because I just think everything about it is fun, the vocals, the harmonies, the opening piano-y bit. It is the twist and shout of the album.
Well, I think if we had to agree together a ranking list where we had to combine our opinions together and agree on a ranking, we probably would be able to agree on that as a number 1, because I could go with that as well.
And it's almost like when you listen to it, you could almost touch John Lennon's vocal, if you know what I mean. It does all the range of John Lennon through the song. It starts off quite sort of slowish, then you get that raspiness in his throat like you got in Twist and Shout. I just think it's just the best song on the album.
It is great rock and roll.
For today, it could change.
Yeah, it could change. Well, I'd put, again, I'd say that could have been my number 1, and I can't argue with that, but I had put All I've Really Got to Do. No, and what's it properly called?
It's All I've Got to Do.
All I've Got to Do is my number.
That could have easily been one of my...
And
could have been up there. Could have been a contender.
Apparently John Lennon was trying to be a bit like a Smokey Robinson song when he wrote it. But to me, it's just got where it builds up to the chorus when he sings like, and the saying goes for me whenever you want me. I think it's quite emotive. It's that sort of, John Lennon, it's that kind of, it's a little bit, makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up a bit. It's one of those great John Lennon emotional vocals.
Top of your head stand up.
Well, it certainly would have to be an amazing song to do that, wouldn't it? It would have to be a day in the life to do that, wouldn't it?
But when you've heard the world's most amazing song, next time I see you come on here, you look like Axl Rose. You'll have hair all the way down here.
So All I've Got to Do is my number 1 this week. But if we did it again next week, it might be something else.
Be different. So the only thing we could agree on was the bottom track.
That's the only one we had in the same position, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Exact same position. Although some of them were pretty much like, well, we could both have had it in that place and whatever. But we both agree that Hold Me Tight is probably the weaker moment on the album.
Yeah, it's just a bit whimsical.
And we also agree that Macca's version of Till There Was You, that we like it more than maybe we should, but we do love it.
Yeah.
Although that is the one that sort of, we know that lots of people will probably sneer at that and say it's awful, put it in at the bottom, but we love it. And we also agree, I think, that Money and All I've Got to Do are both really great.
They are right, yeah, definitely.
And I think we agree that All My Loving is an excellent McCartney one, for sure. And we also agree that Little Child is maybe not as bad as you might think.
So there you go. Perfect. It's a perfect day.
It is. So yeah, no major disagreement there. Apart from the fact that you didn't think Not a Second Time is all that good. So maybe it'll be interesting to see if you can change.
I'll have a re-listen. I'll re-listen to it.
Whether you start to dig it more if you focus on it, who knows? We shall see.
I'll have a listen. I owe it that much.
So, ladies and gents, that was with the Beatles. That took us much longer than it takes to listen to the actual album. We could almost have played it all the way through twice in that time. So, thanks for bearing with us. What are your rankings of the tracks on this album? What do you think of our choices? Do you have points of agreement or massive disagreement with us? Let us know in the comments. We'll be back with another one very soon. Thanks for watching.